It's still recharging. I need to get closer. That spell isn't ready yet. Too far away. I can't cast that yet. That spell isn't ready yet. still recharging. I need to get closer. Too far away. I need a target. That spell isn't ready yet. the target. That's still recharging. assuming the swap, so like assuming they're going to swap a druid, so maybe check the hots on the druid would be another tip. Another thing too is playing a druid is getting caught in cat form really sucks. So if you can find a druid in cat form and open on them, it feels like you're already behind at that point. Another thing is that if you're playing a druid, try to stay in bear sometimes. It seems counterintuitive to why you would be in bear, but one, you take a lot less damage, but mainly two is that if they do get a CC off on you and you're in bear, they can't sap you out of it. Because if you get sapped off the back end of like a psychic scream or a blind, I don't know, it feels like kind of like GG sometimes, man. So you have to stay in animal form.
That's caused us problems as well before, where like a warlock will get a fear off on our druid, and then at that point you have to do everything you can to not let him get sapped, because otherwise like he's CC'd out of the game for like 20 seconds, right? I know that's one thing that like one of your partners, Mir, is really good at. He has like these frame perfect saps where he's just able to get saps off like at all times. It's so frustrating to play against, and like that's huge. As a druid, like you said, is like getting caught into a sap. That's going to be pretty much GG. You're gonna lose somebody for sure.
Another tip too against druid is, you know, they have Nature's Grasp, the ability that puts the root almost always. So if you have a warrior, right, that's trying to attack a druid, and you put that Nature's Grasp, if you as the warrior's partner can eat that Nature's Grasp, it's a big play, man. You can, you know, even if you're I don't know, a rogue or a healer or something, right? Like that's. I've been a druid before, right? And I put Nature's Grasp on. I'm so excited to finally be able to slip away, and then the person's partner takes off the Nature's Grasp instead of the guy who's on me, and that can already feel like GG too, man. It is one of your only escapes is taken away from you. But okay.
Yeah.
Anything else on druid? Let's see. We can move on. Another one here. Any class stick out that you think would be fun to talk about? Who's?
Not sure, actually.
Which class do you play the most after? Is it Rogue? You play a lot of Rogue recently, right? Maybe we can talk about.
Yeah, I played a lot of Rogue.
Okay. Let's talk about the Rogue. This is going into the TBC meta, man, I thought, like, predictions, people were telling me Druids, S tier, like the best class, the most powerful class. You know, CC for days, Life Bloom is OP. You hear all these little rumblings. And at least playing at my level, it wasn't Druids. I mean, for me, the class that sticks out above all else is the Sub-Rogue. The Sub-Rogue is the most powerful thing on the planet.
I agree.
And they just generate...
I think the Sub-Rogue is the single strongest class in the game, basically.
Okay. Wow, there you go. There it is. Yeah, they are so ridiculously powerful. And an undead sub-rogue is the stuff of nightmares for like a warlock. They almost feel like an uninteractable target, you know, in terms of fears and peeling them off and stuff like that. So, what makes a sub-rogue so strong? Why do you think it's the strongest class in the game?
I mean, prep is huge. You know, Rogue has a lot of defensive options. Cloak of Shadows, Vanish, Kidney Shot, Gouge, Kick, Deadly Throw interrupt on top of Kick. So they have 2 interrupts. Evasion, Sprint. All of those can be used defensively blind. Literally all of those abilities can be used defensively. And Prep makes it so that, you know, there's 2 sets of those, basically, or most of them. You have 2 evasions, 2 sprints, 2 vanishes, 2 shadow steps. Shadow step also can be used defensively. Shadow step is huge in and of itself. When you get 2, like that's just insane mobility. That's really unparalleled in the game. No one else has that mobility, and no one else has that, you know, that many defensive options and offensive. It's just the class just has such a, you know, huge toolkit, I guess. Really so many things they can do, really offensively and defensively.
Is there anything they can't do?
Put out a lot of pressure. They have a good mortal strike effect. They have a ridiculous, sometimes, snare, which, you know, slows the target down by 70%. Crazy, yeah.
There's actually nothing a rogue can't do. Thinking about it, they have infinite resources with energy.
Right? They can heal, but that doesn't matter.
True. Yeah, they can't heal. True. But they sort of can, though. They sort of can, because if they're down to that 1v1 situation, we've all seen it before. Rogue is the one class that can climb itself back from that 1% cheat death proc to winning a 1v1
fair enough. Yeah,
against
they can use first aid and cannibalize for sure.
which happens all the time. It's another class that if you get down to that last 1v1 situation, what about at the highest levels of play, Uzbek? Do rogues are still rogues winning every 1v1?
Sure. I would say at the highest level, it's almost all rogues. Not really, but there's a lot.
Like a warlock never clutches against the rogue when some cooldowns are blown at the very end, or like a priest versus a rogue at the very end. They pretty much always lose the rogue. They know what they're doing.
I mean, both can beat a rogue, but not the top level rogue, I would say.
Yeah, I think like with rogues, because they have so many abilities, they have like a really high skill ceiling. So at the high end, like the really really top players can just do so much with it. Even just like insane stuff where like you can like vanish death coils and just do really nutty stuff with like certain abilities that like most people can't do. Like a really really high tier rogue can just have so many advantages over like most other classes, I feel.
For sure.
Also,
rogues do get ridiculous, at the highest level. When you play against someone like Mir, you don't doubt it for a second. It's very hard to play against those players. Against players of that level playing rogue in TBC. It's ridiculous.
I'm also really curious on your thoughts on the ratios, just really quick too. So, the one ratio that stands out above all else, compared to every single other ratio, maybe it's just the classes I play, is Dawn Dead ratio, is WoW, right? It was something that I was sleeping on. I thought, it's not too big of a deal. Sure, you'll eat a CC,
No,
but
it's huge. It's huge. Yeah.
It truly is, right? I mean, it's strat changing. It's so I guess my thing is, perception on the people say perception is the best S tier ratio for alliance for rogues in general. They say when you compare alliance and horde ratios. I mean, how reliable is perception, though, man? Like, even at the top levels, are people still getting value of perception with the opener? Or
they do, yeah, they do. But I feel like a lot of times, what for Will of the Forsaken is just better overall.
Okay,
or two, or three, which will often be the case. Playing RMP, RLP, triple Will of the Forsaken is insane. Double when playing Rogue Mage or Warlock Rogue or Priest Rogue.
And in twos, the opener is so big, right? Like, it pretty much can make you so favored or unfavored to
I mean,
win,
perception is still pretty good. Perception is probably the second best ratio for a rogue. Obviously a rogue. But yeah.
But in threes, like, the
it
opener
depends.
isn't as important.
I think there's a few comps in twos that are better on Alliance for a rogue. Something like Rogue Mage could actually be better. Something like Pharaoh Rogue could be better in Alliance if you just like that kind of playstyle. Both are good. The Horde and the Alliance version of the comp, both are good. And maybe there are some threes comps where playing Alliance, not necessarily for perception, but maybe for playing something like, I don't know, maybe RLP could be better, slightly better on Alliance, but probably Horde is still better.
Somebody told you, Uzbek, the ratios don't really matter that much other than WOTF. If you're living in a world without WOTF, the ratios don't mean like a game-breaking deal. Is that too extreme of a statement?
Probably, yeah, because perception is significantly better than any other ratio.
Okay.
At least for Rogue, and then Stoneform is better for a bunch of other classes, and it's better than most other ratios for those classes.
I see. Gotcha. Okay, so let's see. Top comps for Rogue in twos and threes. I mean, it seems like it's also like a druid, but you can literally
they can play with anything. They can play with anything.
Yeah, they can just play with anything.
But the top comps, in my opinion, would be Rogue Druid in twos, Rogue Druid and Priest Rogue as the second best comp probably. Rogue Mage, Warlock Rogue, Shadow Priest Rogue, Feral Rogue. Though with the latter being the strongest double DPS comps for Rogue. But they can play with anyone really. They can play with hunters, warriors, maybe shamans, not so much in paladins, but still you can play even with those. But the strongest ones being priest rogue and rogue druid. In threes, I would say RLP, RMP, and RLD.
I see. I just had an interesting thought, right? Like, we're probably creating a lot of people interested in playing Rogue as a result of hearing all this. And yes, the class is as sexy as it sounds. It is so powerful. But here's a question, because I don't even know the answer to this. Is it truly as hard as people make it out to be? Like, do you think Rogue is...
It's the hardest class in the game as well, as the strongest one. In my opinion, at least in my experience, out of all classes that I play, Rogue is the hardest to master for sure.
High skill cap, maybe the fastest play. Yeah.
Yeah, the most mechanically, requirement, I guess. I'm not sure what the word here would be. So,
do you have a second behind Rogue that sticks out, or?
Second is in what?
Oh, in terms of just, requiring a lot of finesse and mechanical...
Mage, probably.
Mage. Rogue Mage. Gotcha. And together, Rogue Mage, probably the strongest DPS class is what... Or double DPS comp is the rumor on the street. The two super high finesse...
Certainly one of the strongest, yeah.
Yeah.
Could be the strongest one, yeah.
Could be the strongest one. Gotcha. So what are the... How do you... not die to a rogue? Like, are there any weaknesses in the rogue kit? Because sometimes it feels like there are none. Is there anything that comes to mind? Maybe like playing against rogues as a warrior, is there anything that you can do to try to shut them down even just a little bit?
I mean, like, obviously, like, you don't want them to get the opener on you if at all possible, which can be pretty tough. There's been times playing with the warlock and having the detect invisibility. It can help a bit to try to catch them out with like a demo shout, but like good rogues almost always get openers on you, so that's really tough. Obviously not getting sapped, right, is huge. So when you're against a rogue, you want to try your best to not get sapped. Otherwise, you're kind of on the back foot right from the start. As well, like they dodge a ton, so if they're really focusing hard on a target and they pop evasion, a lot of times I'm not able to land a hamstring on them, so I have to piercing howl. Same with stun. Like, a good way to peel is obviously to stun them and get your target away. They also, have really good CC with blind and things like that. So a lot of times, at least playing a healer, you kind of need to save your trinket for blind, because if you pop it on something else, they're just going to blind you, and then that can be GG a lot of times.
Yeah,
so
that's
at least, yeah. So at least for me, like, when I'm trying to either peel a rogue, it's getting a stun on them, it's getting disarm on them, trying to prevent them from vanish sapping with like demo shouts, keeping them kind of out of stealth. Don't let them re-stealth if you can. Same thing, because once they get into stealth, they can do a lot of really dirty things to you guys, like whether it's like getting sap off or going into their their stun, cheap shot, kidney shot, or even opening with a silence potentially if they could like do some sort of like a rush down on somebody. There's really like a lot to worry about when you're going against rogues, and that's what makes them so dangerous. Is Bogdan said, is that they just have like such a wide kit. Is when you play against one. I mean, I can only imagine what it'd be like playing one, but like playing against them, there's like a laundry list of things you have to worry about, and like that's on top of them being able to push out a lot of damage too. Like, if they're able to sit on somebody with their stuns and damage, like, and they have effectively like a mortal strike, a healing reduction with the poisons. It's tough. They're really tough to play against a good rogue.
Yep. Dwarf shuts them down a little bit too as far as ratios go, because you can remove all those poisons, so you can get a fat stack of wound poison off of you, which is big. Would you say warrior is the class that slows down rogue the most? Like, if the rogue is just destroying your whole team and carrying the enemy team?
Yeah, warriors are certainly annoying for rogues. Probably one of the more annoying classes, especially when they get those RNG mace stuns, and when the warriors do know exactly when to peel you off. They certainly are annoying for a rogue. But those intercepts into hamstring spam or disarm, intervenes. Sometimes they'll intervene your blind if they're good. Sometimes they'll just deny the sap on their healer out of blind with that same intervene or shout you out of vanish. Warriors are annoying for rogues. Yeah, probably one of the more annoying classes. Yeah.
Yeah. For sure. Okay. Now another thing too is blind is I think there's a decent chance blind might be the most powerful cooldown in the game. Again, I'm who am I, right? But this is just something of how it looks from my perspective. It was like the fact that it's 1.5 minutes and trinkets is 2 minutes. It's like the classic way to set up a kill. It looks like people will just try to go for the blind and then just
Pretty
play
stupid
passive.
sometimes. Not gonna lie. Yeah.
It's pretty stupid.
Yeah, I mean, it's stupid that it has a shorter cooldown than a PP trinket, right? 90 seconds. That's what I mean.
Do you think
That just feels stupid. Like that shouldn't be in the game. Is what it feels like a lot of times.
Yeah.
There are ways to play around it, of course, but you can't always do it.
And
It's
annoying
kinda
thing with
broken.
that too sometimes is that like the rogue will blind really early, and then they'll set it up so they'll go for a kill when their blind comes up in 90 seconds because they know that you're probably going to trinket the first one if they're already putting pressure on, right? So they'll do like an early blind on your healer, and then you'll have to trinket if there's pressure, and then
That happens a lot. Yeah.
when that 90 seconds comes up, it's like it's rough.
Maybe Bogdan has a tip for
a lot
this.
of times they will just try to win on second blind. That's true.
Maybe you have a tip for this,
If
Bogdan.
you don't death it, you're done.
Yeah, if you don't death it or if you don't outrange them when you know it's coming, like a lot of, for instance, druids will just stay all the way back and not play the game or like almost they'll just stay back and make sure they don't get blinded, at least without forcing that shadow step, which might give a room for their partner to kite a rogue out or something.
Yeah, and that's an interesting point to mention as well, is that you almost have to like respect it more than other classes because of the power it presents. Like, people, like you said, like the druid or something might end up playing, really conservative because they can't afford to eat another blind, right? It might change how your team plays in a sense. It's almost like game warping.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's just the thing you play around. Basically, when you trinket the first blind, then if you know that by the time second blind comes up or comes off CD, and the rogue still has a lot of offensive cooldowns, such as like banish, step, prep, whatever. It's something you have to do. Like play around that second blind. Make sure you don't get blinded. When you're too close to your DPS guy, or not get blinded at all.
So here's a couple things that would really improve people's play. Probably mine. I'm just like asking selfishly here. One, do you have to trinket the blind, Bogdan? It feels like you almost have to because they're going to sap you out of it. So maybe there's a tip to not get sapped out of the blind. And then two, how do you avoid getting sapped by rogues in the beginning as a warlock, ideally? Because I feel like I get sapped by the rogue every time, and then they just go hard on the team, and then just playing catch up, playing from behind. It sucks. It feels like even if you're Rain of Fire, Hellfire, they can always get that sap on you. Any thoughts on those two things?
Trinketing blind, there's no definite answer. At least I don't have one. Sometimes you do have to trinket, sometimes you don't. You have to look at what's happening in the game, whether or not they have a lot of pressure rolling, or they'll build up that pressure with that blind. Maybe your partner can, maybe sometimes like a rogue will step blind you, and your warrior, let's say, is able to just run away from the rogue and kite him forever. Then it's not worth it to trinket, right? But sometimes it is worth it. It's just really it depends. Mm-hmm. Sometimes you don't have to. Sometimes you do. As for getting combat, or starting against a rogue as a warlock, I would say sending your pet in to get combat with it is a good practice, I guess, a good tip.
Mm-hmm.
So you send your pet in, it hits the guy, right? So it's in combat. You pull it back, you buff it. I don't. It depends. Like I don't know how it works in Endless and how it's gonna work in Classic TBC. On some private servers, you had to buff your pet to get in combat. On others, you would automatically get in combat as soon as they hit.
You get in combat automatically when they hit it. It just sort of seems like the rogue can get to you and sap you before your pet can get to them.
Well, yeah. Sometimes they can. Sometimes they can't. It depends. It's just one of the ways. And while the pet is running, you should be trying to get them out, or at least get yourself in combat with Hellfire. Another option is to just have your pet close and spam that target nearest target macro or whatever it is.
Oh, I don't have
Target.
that. Oh, very nice.
Yes,
that gives you a
it's
better
like a
chance.
macro similar to the Rogue Sap macro, except instead of Sap, you have something like Curse of Agony. So you're spamming the macro, and since you have Paranoia, there's a good chance that you'll see them, and you just make sure you stand in a way that you don't give them your back. So like, up against the wall, or have your back off the edge on Blade's Edge Arena, or you're standing on a rope or something, and then you just spam the macro. And sometimes when they'll go in without sprint, you'll get them out with that Curse of Agony or whatever it is you decide to put in the macro.
So it's a target. It's / target nearest target. Is that what it was? Something like that.
Sorry, come again?
You said the macro is. I'm sure I can get it from somebody after, but it's a target nearest target macro, essentially, with like an agony or a breath
Yeah,
okay.
You can basically Google up Rogue Sap macro and swap Sap for Curse of Agony or Corruption or whatever.
Cargo, so you're taking notes right now.
Dude, yes, absolutely, man, absolutely.
So I guess those are the ways you try to get a better opener against rogues.
Gotcha. Also, I know it seems very basic, right, guys? But this is one thing that helped me a lot, is understanding the importance of stopping them from getting a free re-stealth, as they say. So just put, as a druid, when I'm playing druid, throwing up a fairy fire, I'll always have Navic or Ale or someone yelling at me, put a fairy fire on the rogue, put a fairy fire on the rogue. Like, it's very important, because especially after they use Cloak of Shadows doesn't get reset by prep, right? And so after they use Cloak of Shadows, if you put a fairy fire or a dot or something, like, they're fucked. They can't use their vanishes. Well, they're not fucked. They still can do a million amazing things, but it really messes with them a good amount.
It does, for sure, yeah. And just preventing re-stealths is huge. Like, as a priest, for instance, I don't have a fairy fire, and the rogue will oftentimes run around the pillar, LOSing me, trying to look for that re-stealth, so I have to MD him. Even though MD is like really costly, it's still worth it, I still have to do it. Sometimes I'll end up throwing 2 or 3 MDs in, wasting like 3k mana or something, or 2.7k or whatever, however much it is. But it's still worth it, because it can be like that significant that they don't get that re-stealth. So it's huge, yeah.
Yeah, that can be one thing that definitely messes with them. Okay, let's move on to another class then. Let's move on to the Priest. I have a lot of questions about Priest. Ale, I know you do too, man. We've been struggling versus the Priest. The Priest? Oh boy, where do I start with the Priest? I have been so blown away and impressed by the power of the Priest in TBC, guys. I feel like they're the strongest healer. Oh man, who am I, right? But seriously, man, they do a lot of damage. They're basically like half a DPS guy. They can offensively, defensively dispel. Okay, so I play Warlock, right? Uzbek, so I'm probably biased here. But they have, their existence makes it so you don't even feel like you should multi-dot. So that's one thing I'm dying to get an answer from like a high level player. If you're going up against a Priest team, from the Priest perspective, like, is it worth it multi-dotting, or is Prayer of Mending just absolutely that bananas that it really is not worth it, and maybe you need to use tongues and exhaustion on other targets and stuff like that. Also, I just don't. They just feel unbeatable sometimes, man. Like, if we were playing WLD yesterday, right? And we had a Druid on our side, and we're going up against basically the same team, but they had a Priest instead of a Druid.